It's not ethical that we are voting on taxes on and the fees would have been astronomical, but technically Alderman can only collect 1 cent less than 100,000. And I don't know who the other millions would have gone to, but be that as it may, that person is now in jail, and his cohort who ended up taking over the ward, it was under indictment, is probably going to be testifying in the Madigan trial.
Yes.
So I don't have to name names, so we all know.
They
We all
will
read the
find out who
newspapers.
we are soon enough, right?
So, go ahead. And you know, I can talk about my history. I served on when the fire of the Pullman area happened. I was approached, people said, the politicians want to make it into a strip mall. There's a piece that one of the community activists down there put up on my Twitter account or X account that we put up. They gave it to me. And we organized and stabilized the clock tower, and today the Pullman area is a national park. And I want to thank Jesse Jackson Jr., who actually, when he called me up one day and said, "Bob, I'm thinking about using the Antiquities Act and asking Obama to sign on, and what do you think?" And I said, Congressman, let's do it. And he did it, and he pushed it through, and the community supported him fully, and now it's a national park, getting back to what we were drawing in the past, and soon we'll see hundreds of thousands of visitors there. Good economic development on the south side, good to help as it spreads to our communities, because I'm a firm proponent, as I brought 8,000 jobs to my ward, and we hired from the ward, that people have permanent jobs, and that's what we need. Because
what years were those?
Well, I served in the city council I was elected in 07, and so add on 8 years and you come up with the magic number, so yeah. And you say that because some of the jobs that we created required training. We trained the people, trained the folks, and a lot of them were, I remember coming home one night, and there was somebody on my front porch, and he said, "Alderman, I need a job. I've got 3 kids, I've been dealing drugs, I need some help." And we got him a job. He called me recently, he still had the same job. Some of the people, I always had a job fair too, I should point out, for my ward, for veterans, and for city at large. And I always said to the vendors, you're not here for it to be a beauty contest. We can do that online. You're here to hire people, and if you're not here to hire people, then please don't come. I remember Amtrak came one time, and they needed 30-some positions at the Union Station, and they hired them all from that job fair.
I love that. So, I have a question that's going to be complex, but not really. So, it seems that based on your experience, your political experience as a public servant, I question the alignment between a public servant such as yourself that has created over 5,000 jobs in your tenure. 8,000, sorry, good correction. 8,000 jobs in your tenure. How does that align with a state's attorney? Because, not to say the criminals do not deserve. It just seems like you do a lot of things that are people-centered, and this almost seems like contrary to that to me.
Well, first of all, a lot of things are not in the alderman's description, including bringing jobs, including making sure that we have community benefit agreements, arguing for more ambulances, arguing for a better way of training our police officers, asking questions on what's happening in our communities and how we find the resources in our communities. And that was not in the aldermanic job. It's really not in the state's attorney's job. But I'm going to make sure. I found a grant that started off small, and I say this because it was couple kids during the summer, $20 an hour from low income families.
Mm-hmm.
And we, by the time, the following year, I had some more, the following year, I had 40 kids one summer, training them, bringing them out to the city council meetings, doing work in the neighborhoods. In fact, this year, I got a call from either a guardian or mother, can you help my kid get another job this summer? So somehow we did, but it wasn't in that type of program, because at $20 an hour way back when is a lot of money for somebody. So, and I believe that our failure in our school system is we don't have the trades, and it's good to have a diploma in one hand and a voter registration card in another, but we need to find jobs for everybody. And I said in '07 when I was running, it's everybody should have the opportunity to own a home, everybody should have an opportunity to go to college, but not everybody should own a home, and not everybody should go to college. And a lot of my friends that went into the trades that I grew up with, because at Mendel we had shop, we had trade, we had mechanical engineering, all that. They are all retired, living a peaceful life somewhere, either in the city or elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So let me just put it that way, and God bless all the Mendel monarchs.
I love that. So I want to talk about, so there's this elephant in the room, right? From what I've been told, you've been a Democrat for a really long time, up until about 2022, and you decided to switch parties in Chicago, which is a predominantly Democratic city. Can you tell me, and Kai also, the thought process in the switch and why you made that decision?
Well, I think in my first vote, we were talking just before the program about being 18 and voting for the first time.
Yeah.
My first vote, the polls were open from 6 to 6. I was in Champaign. It was March. I drove all the way back up to the firehouse at 120th and State Street to cast my first vote in the Democratic Party.
I love it.
And that was in 1972. So, and yes, you know, but the Democratic Party has left me and has left a lot of people. The values on family, on how they view fiscal responsibility. When I was in the city council, I was accused of being a Republican because I wanted to make sure that we do accounting and making sure the funds went to the right people. Everybody said, oh no, just let it go, let it go. I voted against 6 of the budgets that I was, out of the 8 that I was able to vote on.
Mm-hmm.
3 under Daley and 3 under Ron. And I probably would have voted against 4 out of Ron, but it was right during the time that I had my cancer, and I did analyze it, and everybody said, oh, they all want a 50 to 0, they were at 49, and I was hesitating, and on the morning of, I voted for it. But since then, I should say, when you come to the mental health areas, they all closed the clinics. I've been advocating to reopen them. They were only $2 million for the 6 that we closed, $2 million a piece. It would have been 12. The budget has gone from a little over $8 billion in the 10 years to well over $16 billion. I mean, we can't find a few $1 million to help those that have mental issues, crisis on our streets.
Mm.
So I say that there's a lot of things: fiscal responsibility, family values, how they view crime, and now we hear, you know, a lot of the Democrats who voted for the Crime Control Act in the 90s are saying, oh, it was a big mistake. I'm like, well, you locked them all up. Where the heck have you been? You're coming around to seeing what's happening now in our communities. You're seeing what's happening to all the ex-offenders, the people that want jobs. I mean, it's you know, the Republican Party in Chicago is much more socially liberal, But they're tough on crime, they're tough on fiscal responsibility.
So is it fair to say that Chicago has always, I think, yes, we're seen as Democrats, but Cheryl and I were talking about this, how we have always voted for who we think is the right person for the job. We've had many Republican governors, and it, had a lot to do with the Chicago vote. So we get that, but I think the main question here is it because of and I think you were starting to talk about that, have you experienced or seen an ideological shift in the way Democrats in Chicago are voting or the choices that they're making? And then if so, is that why you shift?
Well, I think you're right, in terms of how the shift in what I'm seeing across the board. And, I look at things, and, everybody said I was when my last day in the city council at the last meeting, I was one of, if not the hardest working alderman most people I ever saw. I was creative in my approaches. How we serve education to make sure our kids are doing well, our kids getting jobs, and at the same to keep them out of trouble on the streets. At the same time, how I approached my communities to make sure they were clean. We had cleanups throughout it, not once, but 3 or 4 times a year, so people can take pride in their communities. My ward went from parts of Bronzeville all the way straight up, McCormick Place, Soldier Field, out west, the Sears Tower, all the parking lots around the United Center and beyond Sacramento. And so it was pretty diverse in communities. I'm not saying you can add up the numbers and not that kind of diversity, but diversity in communities and community interests. And so I saw people shifting then on the far west side especially. And people were telling me, I remember knocking on one door and early on, and somebody said, well, I'm not voting for any white guy. He showed up at a community meeting and said, he made the biggest mistake. I'm gonna vote for you every time. And this was an area that Fred Hampton, Mark Clark were involved in, and still their roots are deep in our communities out there. At the same time, Mayor Daley lived in the ward, and he put 300 people out on the street on election day to make sure I wasn't elected, but people saw the difference and they said they were going to vote for me.
So I'm gonna just pose this question to continue that. I know we read one, I think it was a statement, well, it was a statement that you made in regards to Kim Fox seemingly saying that the police are bad. And
yeah, the police officers are the bad guy and the victims don't count.
Right. And I wanted to just discuss that with you. I mean, I don't know if that's what she really meant, and I don't care, but I interpret it as thinking that she wanted to humanize more the police, not accuse them of all being bad. And whether she did or not, how do you see changing the relationship between the community and the police? Because the point is that they are human too. We have to look at both the victims and the police as human, and then we have to go about, right, how are we going to, in effect, change that relationship?
Well, I think you need a state's attorney who's out in the community, and somebody has to be out there. I think the failings of all of the past state's attorneys is they view their job strictly as how to enforce the law or whether this person is we should bring to trial. And what you said, police officers are human too. And, you know, the 11th district, which has a lot of the issues, from those victims, gunshot victims, I don't know what the numbers are right now, they're huge to, disinvestment in the community, but the police officers who arrive not just once or twice during their career, but multiple times during the year to see the shotgun victims lying on the street, sometimes are bleeding, and they try to rescue. The trauma is not just on the victim, their families, and the community, but it's also on the police officers who bring that back to their houses. And you see the huge rise of suicides lately in the police department. Another officer just killed himself within the last 10 days. You know, they need, I think they're underpaid, in my view. They shouldn't have secondary employment. And then those that are in the city want to make sure their kids go to good schools, and the public schools are failing in some of the areas. Actually, a lot of the areas, we know what the attendance rate is, what the graduation rate is, what the reading and math rates are. And they struggle to have a second job to put their kids in private schools or whatever, same with fire. And to see enough people on the street and the trauma and the crying, you know, I was at 2 memorials this year. One for I've been to several, I should say, but one was for the 5-year-old that was killed just footsteps from my house, and the 7-year-old who was also killed footsteps from my house. I mean, that was my ward. The people asked me to come out and help them and see what we can do. You know, like I said, and the police were there too for the memorial. The commander was out there. We need to have that interaction with our communities, and more importantly,
Is that something that you would implement?
yes,
Okay.
absolutely. And at the same time, work with our state legislators, help bring the resources into our communities. I was able to find $370 million in between TIF, city funds, federal funds, state funds for my community. I think we can do that on a much larger scale, and I plan on doing that.
We gotta make sure to keep the tips.
Yeah, we got the tips have to stay.
That's another story.
That's a whole nother story, right?
Oh, you bet. It
So,
sure is.
so I actually wanted to talk about, in continuation to this discussion, as it relates to, you mentioned the Democrats and specifically Kim Foxx being soft on crime. I want to deep dive that because I often believe that when I hear terminology from people that say we are soft on crime, ideally none of us want crime to exist, right? But what does that mean in your own personal definition that she was soft on crime, and then conversely, what would you do differently?
Well, I don't think I've ever said she was soft on crime. I may have said other words, but I do think
And not to correct you, on your website it says over the soft on crime policies of Kim Foxx.
well, you can correct me, and I think people should be charged
Okay.
to the fullest.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we do not coddle violent criminals,
Mhm.
and that's what I see in the state's attorney's office presently. Now, I say this at the same time. We have diversionary courts. People don't really understand what that means. I was invited by the presiding judge of the drug court in May to come to the graduation.
Mhm.
And a lot of the 18 people that graduated had a lot of multiple drug offenses.
Mhm.
One guy, I think, had 18, you know, either arrests and or convictions, you know. So, what we do in that drug court, we put them through a program. We try to find a job for them. And we do find jobs for them. And if they live by the program, their records get expunged.
Mm-hmm.
I'm picking up my phone because if I can find a picture here, and I may not be able to because it's probably, maybe it was a long time ago, but the individual, I walked into a meeting in a building, and here was this individual, and he was the one, and he said, Alderman, I saw you at my graduation. And sure enough, it was somebody that graduated through the program. He said, I'm supporting you on whatever you do, and I'm here for you. And it'll be too difficult to find the picture, but he was so proud. I said something to the management that day because on it, and they said, you know what, we got to promote him on what he did through everybody in the class, and tell others to do that too. I can't find the picture, but you know, he was proud. We have mental health courts. We have women's court. We have a veterans court. We have a second chance program on crime.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I had an alderman, and it was written up several times in it sometimes. He was being harassed by a woman who was hanging out in L station. Every time he got in the L, she would, you know, I think she may have pulled a knife on him, hit him with sticks. I said, Jim, you have to have her arrested. Oh, I can't do that. I said, why not? Well, she'll have a record then. No, we get her in a program.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we find the resources to help people to get in programs, help them out, and when we can, find jobs for them. So I want to use that much more so under it, but we will not, I'm going to enforce the laws written, and you know what, we got a lot of kids out there that are causing a lot of problems, but they too have to go through the program.
Mm-hmm.
They too have to understand what's happening, and we need to find jobs for them way before they commit a crime. Simple as that. And we can do that if we all start working together and start thinking, well, it's my little area here. Well, damn it, it's not. We are here for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's connected, for sure. So, speaking on to that, I want to talk about you're not so happy about the Safety Act, I've heard. I want to talk about that a little bit because it's always been it's been an elusive subject to me for the last year and a half or so, and it seems as though there are very polarizing views on it. And the way that I understand it, essentially, let's say someone that has a speeding violation has a warrant, gets pulled over, gets into the county, is arraigned within a general processing time, and is allowed to be released, regardless to how much money they have. They get like a citation, and then they get to go home. That's an adequate understanding, right? Is that similar to what is happening now?
Well, see, my issues with the Safety Act was just like we see more times than not, things are passed in the middle of the night.
Mm-hmm.
The act was, I think, plopped on everybody's desk, I don't know, an hour in the morning, but 917 pages. I'd like to find out how many state reps and state senators read that, number one.
Mm-hmm. It was a lot.
And then the lawsuit happened by 100 state's attorneys, and there were only two that didn't join it, Kim Fox and the state's attorney in Lake County. And from there, they ended up resolving with a 300 page trailer bill later on that made some adjustments, some amendments in the Safety Act. I think judges should have a greater discretion. They should be able to look at an individual and say, let's look at was it a violent crime? What's their background?
Mm-hmm.
Are they a flight risk? Would they be a harm to the victim? Could they be a harm to the community? Judges should have that discretion and make the decisions then. And I know my
That
opponent.
also assumes that they're vetting to the capability that you used to vet the judges, right?
Yeah, absolutely, you got it.
Yeah.
So, and, that's why the judges I know that are over there that I talk to often or not often enough, have good common sense, but they know they don't have the discretion. And the other problem is, Tim Evans, the chief judge, came out with a report that said that the people show up for courts. Well, that's not true. And Iris Martinez issued a statement that went to the county board president and said it was in the 60+% of people were not showing up for their court appearances. Now, you listen to the chief judge, or you listen to how we spent almost $40 million on a case management system that accounts for everything, every court case, who shows up, who doesn't, or what. And I'm going with the numbers that Iris Martinez has said.
That's interesting.
Because don't forget that 40 million was almost 40, was taxpayer money.
Okay. Yeah, I want to talk about optics as it relates to being a state's attorney if elected. Again, you seem to be a public servant. You've been a civil rights attorney. You look out for people. The state's attorney's office doesn't seem like the place that has that same amount of appeal. It seems like we can relate it to a television show. The state's attorney is always the venomous bad guy. You can't trust that guy. He's putting away a bunch of people of color. He is not our friend. We cannot trust you. That's just honest truth, right? What makes this job, what makes it wrong? What about our optics are we misunderstanding as it relates to the state's attorney's office? Are they really for the people and the safety, our personal safety, or is it more of a gangbusters, cowboys and Indians, we want everybody to go to jail type of situation?
Well, my view has been, why I'm running is because I want to restore the rule of law.
Mm-hmm.
And people can respect it. And kids as they're going through school understand, and we can find jobs.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I do want to support the victims. I'm going to stand up for the victims and their families. But then I want to break this whole cycle of crime and corruption.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're talking about, I think we can do.
Yeah.
And I know it's a huge task, but I'm going to be out there in our neighborhoods, fighting for the people, making sure that we have strong, safe streets, we have strong communities everywhere, and we need thriving businesses. And we need those businesses that provide the jobs for people in our communities. And we can find ways to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my view, and I'm sticking with it. And
State's attorneys are not the bad guy.
Yeah, and you may see the state's attorney walking down your block.
Okay.
So yes.
So we want to talk about one thing that's on your platform page: ICE and violent illegal alien criminals. And it's a quote from you. It says, "Just as the Democratic Party has consistently valued violent criminals over victims and corrupt politicians over taxpayers, it has placed the needs of illegal immigrants ahead of citizens in historically disenfranchised communities." That's a large statement, right?
True.
You back that statement.
True.
You believe that.
True.
So when you are state's attorney, this will end. I will cooperate with ICE to remove violent illegal alien criminals from our streets and neighborhoods. So my core question is a question I frequently ask when the immigrant conversation comes up with them being violent criminals. Now, and you're talking about people who have come to Chicago and have committed crimes, not past crimes, right?
Well, some of them have committed crimes in the past, and the records weren't vetted, and there's a lot that are committing crimes here. And so this study, we're trying to keep it, everybody on the forefront's trying to keep it quiet about who's who's committing the type of crimes. Second City blog had which is all police officers, and I tried to read it, showed that the first, I think it was the first 8 months of this year, 32.9% of the people that were arrested were foreign born. You know, and if you watch CWB, if you listen to some of the other items, if you go past the Standard Club, 22nd and Canal, the one on Ogden, you can see people standing out there, and they all have an electronic monitor. Not all of them, some, okay. But you see them, and you're wondering why they're there, and what they're doing, and I think we have a real issue out here. And we've invested, I met with some ex-offenders today, early this morning, and they are ticked off, to say the least. Why have we given hundreds of millions of dollars and allowed them to get a liquor license, become a police officer, carry a gun to go through the system, and if you have a felony on your record, you can't, and you've been clean for years? You know, it doesn't make any sense. We have to treat our people elevate them, give them respect. You know, everybody has to be assimilated. My dad came off the boat, and if you ever see a picture of the boat, I used to carry it in my city hall office, and every time we were talking about migrant issues, I'd bring it out, and I mean, it was a freighter. They had a couple hundred people in first class, there was no second class, and 1,300 plus in third class. And I know where my parents were and how and what. They were, my dad was in the third class as a 7-year-old.
Wow.
Super sad.
And they came through Ellis Island.
So you're aware that we are a country of immigrants. And I just wanted to clarify on that, because I just, like I said, the sound bites of violent criminals always, it's elusive to me, because it's like, okay, how do we have documentation and credential knowledge knowing that these people are violent? And if so, I'm assuming that's a federal issue, because that's something that could have been vetted, obviously, in Texas or in, you know, at the entry point. But yeah, I just wanted to clear that up, because I do believe that there is a thing that's going on in our city as it relates to division. It's very divisive right now as it relates to the migrants, people of color, Hispanic Americans, Latinx, and the migrants, right? There's a disconnect here. And now we're getting in a position where being progressive means that you're completely okay with everybody being here and jobs and opportunities being taken away, or you're conservative. You see what I mean? So I just...
And it's unfortunate that we have that division.
Yeah.
And, you know, the hundreds of millions of dollars that have gone into the satisfying the migrants, when that hundreds of millions of dollars could have been used here, is a whole different story.
Right.
You know, and we have issues in our communities. We have probably this weekend we'll have 2,600 people, 2,600 people shot in this city. The first 30 minutes in the room, a long-time estimate was $50,000 to treat that individual. That money could be used in our communities for a better way, better resources, and to do things. Why was it that over 200,000 African Americans left this city in the last 10, 12 years, and it's much higher now? It's because the same issues that face everybody: crime, property taxes, and what we see for lack of educational opportunities. And that's why I serve on the Historic Pullman Educational Foundation. We give 25 scholarships a year. This year we have 102 that we're administering. We call the students up in their colleges once a month, check up on them, make sure they're doing okay, if they're having issues, so they don't stumble in their education, what we can do. And a lot of those kids from the south and west side are going to historic black and colleges and universities. And I am a proponent that, and sitting with them at our symposiums that we have once a year, when they all come together, is the most amazing thing, because anybody listening to this program, they are some of the brightest kids that I've ever seen in my life.
I'm gonna put you on the spot here. If you had access to all of the voters in Chicago, and you had about 30 seconds to convince them to elect you to this position, what would you tell them?
Well, first of all, I thought this was all the voters in the city.
No, it's just us. Yeah. How would you do that?
Same voters.
Somebody said to me, you're restoring the U in unity, and that's my aim. My aim is that we're not divisive. It's not black, brown versus white. We're all in it together. We all lift everybody up. We all do the same sort of things that we have for all of our kids, because everybody loves their kids, period. And that's where we have to start. Education, how we deal with the corruption, that we, and tell our kids the difference between right and wrong. And I think parents and guardians want to do that. And I am running to achieve a different type of state's attorney in that office. Somebody that's here to fight for the people, have safe streets, strong communities, and thriving businesses, no matter what zip code you are, no matter what race, gender, belief you have. We're all in it together, because this is the greatest city in the United States. I used to bring up kids every year, about